Chapter 34 of Colonel Quaritch, V.C. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Colonel Quaritch, V.C. by H. Rider Haggard. Chapter 34. George's Diplomatic Errand. George carried out his intention of going to London. The morning following the day when Mr. Quest had driven to the auctioneer in the dog-cart to Honham, George might have been seen an hour before it was light, purchasing a third-class return ticket to Liverpool Street. Arriving there in safety, he partook of a second breakfast, for it was 10 o'clock, and then, taking a cab, he had driven himself to the end of that street in Pimlico where he had gone with the fair Edithia, and where Johnny had made acquaintance with his ash-stick. Dismissing the cab, he made his way to the house with the red pillars, where he was considerably taken aback, for the place had every appearance of being deserted. There were no blinds to the windows, and on the step were muddy footmarks and bits of rags and straw, which seemed to be the litter of a recent removal. Indeed, there on the road were the broad wheel marks of the van which had carted off the furniture. He started at this with slight dismay. The bird had apparently flown and left no address, and he had had his trip for nothing. He pressed upon the electric bell. That is, he did this ultimately. George was not accustomed to electric bells. Indeed, he had never seen one before, and after attempting in vain to pull it with his fingers, for he knew that it must be a bell because there was the word itself written on it, he condescended to try his teeth. Ultimately, however, he discovered how to use it, but without result. Either the battery had been taken away or it was out of gear. Just as he was wondering what to do next, he made a discovery. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it and it opened, revealing a dirty hall, stripped of every scrap of furniture. Entering, he shut the door and walked upstairs to the room where he had fled after thrashing Johnny. Here he paused and listened, for he thought he heard somebody in the room. Nor was he mistaken, for presently a well-remembered voice shrilled out within him. "Who's skulking about outside there?" said the voice. "If it's one of those bailiffs, he'd better hook it, for there's nothing left here." George's countenance positively beamed at the sound. "Bailiffs, marm?" he sung out through the door. "It ain't no varminty bailiffs, it's a friend, and just when you're wanting one seemingly. Can I come in?" "Oh yes, come in, whoever you are," said the voice. Accordingly he opened the door and entered, and this was what he saw. The room had, like the rest of the house, been stripped of everything, with the exception of a box and a mattress, beside which was an empty bottle and a dirty glass. On the mattress sat the fair Edithia, alias Mrs. d'Aubigne, alias the Tiger, alias Mrs. Quest, and such a sight as she presented George had never seen before. Her fierce face bore traces of recent heavy drinking, and was moreover dirty, haggard, and dreadful to look upon. Her hair was a frowsy mat, on some patches of which the golden dye had faded, leaving its natural hue, which was a doubtful grey. She had no collar on, and her linen was open at the neck. On her feet were a filthy pair of white satin slippers. On her back that same gorgeous pink satin tea gown which Mr. Quest had observed on the occasion of his visit, now, however, soiled and torn. Anything more squalid or more repulsive than the whole picture cannot be imagined, and though his stomach was pretty strong, and in the course of his life he had seen many a sight of utter destitution, George literally recoiled from it. "What's the matter?" said the hag sharply, "and who the dickens are you? Ah, I know you, you're the chap who whacked Johnny," and she burst into a hoarse scream of laughter at the recollection. "It was mean of you, though, to hook it and leave me. He pulled me, the devil, and I was fined £2 by the beak." "Mean of him, marm, not me, but he was a mean varmint altogether, he was, to go and pull a lady too. I never heard of such a thing. But, marm, if I might say so, you seem to be in trouble here," and he took a seat upon the deal box. "In trouble? I should think I was in trouble. There's been an execution in the house, that is, there's been 3 executions. One for rates and taxes, and one for a butcher's bill, and one for rent. They all came together and they fought like wildcats for the duds. That was yesterday, and you see all they have left me, cleaned me out of everything, down to my new yellow satin, and then asked for more. They wanted to know where my jewellery was, but I did them there, hee.
Meaning, marm?
Meaning I hid it, that is, what was left of it, under a board. But that ain't the worst. When I was asleep, that devil Ellen, who's had her share of the swag all these years, got to the board and collared the thing and bolted with them. And look what she's left me instead." And she held up a scrap of paper. "A receipt for 5 years' wages, and she's had them over and over again. Ah, if I ever get the chance at her." And she doubled her long hand and made a motion as of a person scratching. "She's bolted and left me here to starve. I haven't had a bit since yesterday, nor a drink either, and that's worse. What's to become of me? I'm starving. I shall have to go to a workhouse. Yes, me," she added in a scream, "me, who have spent thousands. I shall have to go to a workhouse like a common woman."
"It's cruel, marm, cruel," said the sympathetic George, "and you, a lawful wedded wife, till death do us part. But, marm, I saw a public over the way. Now, no offence, but you'll let me just go over and fetch a bite and a sup?"
"Well," she answered hungrily, "you're a gent, you are, though you are a country one. You go while I make a little toilet, and as for the drink, why, let it be brandy."
"Brandy it shall be," said the gallant George, and departed.
In 10 minutes he returned with a supply of beef patties, some plates and glasses, and a bottle of good strong British brown, which, as everybody knows, is a sufficient quantity to make 3 privates or 2 blue jackets drunk and incapable. The woman, who now presented a slightly more respectable appearance, seized the bottle, and pouring about a wineglass and a half of its contents into a tumbler, mixed it with an equal quantity of water, and drank it off at a draught. "That's better," she said, "and now for a patty. It's a real picnic, this is." He handed her one, but she could not eat more than half of it, for alcohol destroys the more healthy appetite, and she soon flew back to the brandy bottle.
"Now, marm, that you are a little more comfortable, perhaps you will tell me how you got into this way, and you with your rich husband as well as I knows, to love and cherish you."
"A husband to love and cherish me," she said. "Why, I have written to him 3 times to tell him that I'm starving, and never a penny has he given me, and there's no allowance due yet, and when there is they'll take it, for I owe hundreds."
"Well," said George, "I call it cruel, cruel, and he's rolling in gold. £30,000 he has just made, that I know of. You must be an angel, marm, to stand it, an angel without wings. If it were my husband, I'd know the reason why."
But I daren't. He'd murder me. He said he would."
George laughed gently. "Lord, Lord," he said, "to see how men do play it off upon poor weak women, working on their nerves like that. He kill you, Lawyer Quest kill you, and he's the biggest coward in Boisingham. But there it is. This is a world of wrong, as the parson says, and the poor shorn lambs must jam their tails down and turn their starns to the wind. And so must you, marm. So it's the workhouse you'll be in to-morrow. Well, you'll find it a poor place. The skilly is that rough, it do fare to take the skin off your throat, and not a drop of liquor, not even a cup of hot tea, and work too, lots of it. Scrubbing, marm, scrubbing."
This vivid picture of miseries to come drew something between a sob and a howl from the woman. There is nothing more horrible to the imagination of such people than the idea of being forced to work. If their notions of a future state of punishment could be got at, they would be found in 9 cases out of 10 to resolve themselves into a vague conception of hard labour in a hot climate. It was the idea of the scrubbing that particularly affected the Tiger. "I won't do it," she said. "I'll go to chokey first."
"Look here, marm," said George in a persuasive voice, and pushing the brandy bottle towards her, "where's the need for you to go to the workhouse or to chokey either? You with a rich husband as is bound by law to support you as becomes a lady, and marm, mind another thing, a husband as has wickedly deserted you. "Which how